Окей. Для
So, our dear participants, please be informed of some side activities in the lunch venue. As you can see next to the coffee table, we have additional collateral activities to our main event. First of all, you can use the virtual reality goggles to see the story of some of the Crimean expats about the neighborhood that they were forced to leave during the occupation. The Project Crimea has contributed to setting up this storyline, and also will be exposed to some additional facts about Crimea and its current life. Also, you can see the stand of Crimean resistance with some of the key facts of Crimean resistance movement. Also, we try to symbolize some of the actions performed by Ukrainian citizens, which are attended to sometimes at risk to their own life, particularly in the occupied territories. Placing the yellow ribbon, which is the symbol of Crimean resistance, might have you subjected to the Russian oppression and imprisonment. As you can see, there is a collection of yellow ribbons which you are invited to put on the stand, thus expressing your solidarity with the Crimean people and Ukrainians living in Crimea as well as in other temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. So please, during the breaks, in the network meetings, or in any other occasion, please find a minute to take one of those yellow ribbons and to put it on the stand, thus expressing your solidarity. And with that, I believe we can start our panel. Thank you so much for filling in this pause.
I think we could start our panel discussion. Global food security, feeding the world from under the Russian missiles and amidst the ecocide. I think it's really important discussion today how Russian genocide against Ukraine affected the food supply around the world and how to overcome its consequences together. And I'm really thankful to the Crimean platform for, together with all partners, including the International Center for Ukrainian Victory, to bring our panelists from the whole world today to Kyiv to discuss the solutions. Because I think it's important to share your expertise, facts, but also to strategize. And I do believe that during this session, we will also, after the discussion, we will come up with new ideas and actually what should we expect to do more from our global partners. So, since we started a little bit late and we have honorable speakers traveling here from almost all continents, so let's start immediately from the short video, which will, like introductory video, to understand deeper the situation, what's happening in Ukraine and how the farmer industry and farmers are coping with the aggression from Russian side. Ну що, друзі, запускаємо відео.
With that, let us see if the video is playable.
Despite the full-scale invasion, Ukraine is among the top 10 exporters of wheat, barley, corn, rapeseed and soybeans in the world. And in terms of sunflower and oil production, Ukraine was number one before the full-scale invasion of Russia and occupation of the southern regions of Ukraine. Ukraine exported more than 90% of agricultural products by sea because the key importers are the countries of North Africa, the Middle East and East Asia. Now exports have become not only difficult and limited, but also extremely dangerous due to Russia's shelling of Ukrainian ports. The Russian invasion also caused the purposeful destruction of Ukrainian agricultural infrastructure. The Russians are purposefully destroying Ukrainian farms, stealing machinery, shelling businesses, mining fields and killing leaders of the Ukrainian agricultural sector. Greenhouses, warehouses, and the product themselves undergo significant destruction. Total loss of grains and oilseeds is estimated at 485,000 tons as of October 8, 2023. In just 9 days of war and shelling of Ukrainian ports in July 2023, Russia destroyed 180,000 tons Ukrainian grain, 26 port infrastructure facilities, and 5 civilian ships. In addition, enterprises in the occupied territories, which occupy 18% of the area of Ukraine, are currently suspended. According to the latest estimates, more than 6 million tons of grain crops were stolen by the Russians from the occupied Ukrainian territories in 2022 alone. These are the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, which are the basis of Ukraine's agriculture and are currently partially occupied. On June 6, 2023, the Russians blew up the Kakhovska hydropower plant and caused a large-scale man-made ecological disaster, the consequences of which are already affecting the entire planet, especially catastrophic for the southern regions of Ukraine. Kakhov Reservoir was the main supplier of water for one of the largest irrigation systems in Europe. 1.5 million hectares of irrigated land have been lost. Fish plague has been recorded. Grease and oil stains can reach the Mediterranean, and dolphins are already dying en masse in the Black Sea. Russian occupiers have committed the biggest ecocide not only during this war, but in decades. Arable fields are filled with shells and mines. Today, Ukraine is the most mined country in the world. More than 40% of the territory of Ukraine is mined. As a result of Russia's hostilities in Ukraine, 5.5 million tons of pollutants were released into the air. 188,000 square kilometers of soils are at risk of damage and pollution. 470,000 hectares are mined. Hundreds of destroyed agricultural enterprises. Polluted rivers and seas. 3 million hectares of forest are covered by the war. War is Russia's contribution to climate change. The Russian war is destroying our planet, and its consequences are more catastrophic than the 2 world wars combined. Ukraine is cut off from the global export arena, due to which importers of the global south are forced to pay more for food. In the future, the closure of the grain corridor, which Russia wants, will lead to an increase in world prices by 10–15%. Russia makes a weaponization of food and weaponization of hunger. If Russia is not stopped, then over time everyone will feel the consequences of this war. Agriculture is one of the main branches of the economy of Ukraine, and it is able to restore its abilities. These are Kyiv, Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, and Mykolaiv regions. After liberation by the armed forces of Ukraine, these territories returned to life. Despite the threat of shelling, Ukrainian farmers are rebuilding their businesses, going out into the fields and preparing for the new season. They risk their lives every day to feed you and us. Help us to stop Russian terror. Ukraine's victory means ensuring stability, well-being, and security for Europe and the global South. Demilitarization of the Black Sea is the real solution for freedom of navigation and secure freedom of export to feed the world.
I think it's really important today to discuss global food security and Ukrainian farmer security and Ukraine's role in global food security. And before we move to our speaker, I would like to remind the audience some statistics before the full-scale Russian aggression, the results of Ukraine's agriculture in 2021. So the highest production growth, agriculture production on farms increased by 19%. About 14% of country's population was employed in agriculture sector. Also, the highest percentage of GDP. Agriculture accounted for over 10% of Ukraine's gross domestic product, the highest among all sectors. Agriculture and food products are also represented at the largest percentage of Ukraine's total export. And 20 years ago, Ukraine provided food for 40 million people worldwide. In 2021, Ukraine's contribution was equivalent for feeding approximately 400 million people worldwide, not including its own population. By 2030, Ukraine's strategy for the development of the agriculture sector aims to ensure food security for 1 billion people worldwide. So, of course, Ukraine accounted for over 40% of global export of sunflower oil, 13% of corn, and almost 18% of barley. So it was before the full-scale war. And of course, after the Russian aggression, full-scale war, a genocide started, approximately 36% of pre-war grain cultivation in the country was directly affected by Russian aggression. About 30% of Ukraine's territory is at risk of landmines. And now I would like to start our discussion from Ukrainian farmers, and especially those who were under occupation and who are living close to the border with Russia. And let me start from Vadim Svetlov, head of farm enterprise Svetlova. Farm enterprise Svetlova is located in Sumy region in the nearest border area. Since the very beginning of the war, it has been under constant shelling. The occupiers have caused great damage to Sumy communities, village, people, business, and also managers of the company are faced with making decisions about sowing and other work, and actually responsibility for the employees. Vadim, I just recently visited Sumy region. Besides Sumy city, Охтирка, Тростянець, and we had a meeting with the representatives of local communities. And people came to the meeting, and especially from Білопільська громада, and were demanding the evacuation of people because it's 5-kilometer zone from the Russian border, constant shelling. And there was the question to me asking, Hannah, how the West consider Sumy region as a buffer zone? What should we expect in the future, and why we are not having enough anti-air defense system? Because for people, especially local, not farmers, but local people living in villages in that Hromada, it's very hard, taking into account their age, to leave their homes, even to like 50 kilometers from that line with the aggressor. So how is actually your enterprise? What are the biggest challenges now, and what you expect from our international community?
Greetings. Thank you for the question. Let me introduce again. I am Vadim. I'm a farmer from Sumy. And our enterprise is indeed within the 5-kilometer zone from the border with the aggressor. It's difficult to work. We indeed are being shelled, and the lands are contaminated with explosive objects and ordnance. Some of the areas we lost due to mines, but still, regardless, we work, we show productivity, we show good harvest, but we have some serious challenges. We need help. And first of all, of course, it's the matter of security. We really need more protection and more air defense, because Rockets are flying above our heads. We see them almost daily. Sometimes they hit nearby areas or warehouses. We see the drones that fly above our heads. And sometimes we get the feeling that, we are like a buffer zone, indeed. And the air defense is further down the central Ukraine. But we work to ensure great result. We work effectively. But of course, with the new challenges, now we feel the deficit of manpower because many people moved to Western Ukraine when the war started. Some came back. Some decided to be in the Western Ukraine. Some are recruited to the army. Some people are afraid. They understand that, well, we're not fully protected. And also people, they work, they love their job, but they, well, want to be with their families. And some say that, yeah, we probably won't stay, we want to move out, and we want to be with the families. And like we even had the issue before the war. People in rural areas have been thinking to move to towns, especially younger people who are capable of working with modern equipment, with modern technologies. They were willing to move to the city. And in the agriculture, timeliness is crucial. If we do everything timely, we can sow properly, we can have a good yield and get profits. Another challenge is with exporting. The prices are, for some of the cultures, the price went down 2 times, and some are not even breaking profits. It makes no sense to sow them this year. So we are constantly looking out to see new things. We used to have the standard mix. We had the wheat, the barley, soy, and sunflower. After the war started, we switched to the millet and the buckwheat. Buckwheat was providing good price last year, but then probably it was oversowing of buckwheat this year, and the price went down. So we see some of the cultures, they went down. Technical cultures like soy and sunflower, they still show profits. But this year, soy goes down, sunflower also is coming down in price, but still, more or less. But this year, I would not sow wheat, corn, or barley, because the logistics is very expensive. To transport a ton of wheat to a port or to the west of Ukraine, it costs like $160 per ton, and then $80 is for the transportation. So you see, 70% is the profit you would get, but the production cost is 110. So it doesn't break even, it doesn't break profit. When we need a proper funding also, we want to buy new equipment, we don't want to pay salaries in time, because we are in the risk zone, so the banks are reluctant to give us loans. And the different foundations are also not really willing to fund us. But we are working effectively. We're working, we're staying, we show good results. So this is how it is. Thank you. May God bless you, because you really work in these difficult conditions of shelling.
Suffering from the negative consequences of the war, 44% of producers report a catastrophic increase in the cost of production. More than 150,000 of farmer workers in the food system were directly affected by the war or forced to migrate. So this is also the negative consequences. And when we are speaking about local and smaller farmer, we are speaking about families, about their destinies. And this is really very painful and heartbreaking. So now I would like also to discuss with Serhiy Leonov, who is from Kyiv region, and his company Rove Agro, which was established 5 years ago in 2018. And also the war caused a lot of material damage and Russian aggression, and your enterprise was under occupation. And could you follow up what just Vadim said about priority needs? Because in Sumy regions, of course, it's anti-air defense system, and the faster we win, the better conditions for farmers to keep feeding the world and their families. In Kyiv region, your enterprise was damaged a lot. Someone compensated these damages, or you are fighting, seeking to international community? How situation is now with your enterprise and your plans?
Доброго дня.
Greetings. Thank you, Hanno, for the possibility to speak. I would like to show a set of slides to show how it happened, how the occupation had been going on, and then I will just be accompanying it with explanation. We are a small company, a small and young group of companies. We have 2 farms in Kiev region, and sorry, the clicker. Oh yeah. Yeah. So we are in the Kiev region. We opened in 2017, and we grow classic agricultural cultures. In 2019, we started a new path. We started growing berries. We had a sea buckthorn orchard in Ukraine, one of the biggest in Ukraine. So we have about 1,500 hectares overall in Dymirka community, Vyshgorod, and Svetlanska community. We were developing. It was going fine until February the 24th, because the farm in Dymyr Ryan essentially was occupied within the first day. So in Kiev, in other cities, we, for example, had time to buy petrol or food. In Dymyr, people, well, didn't even have a chance. We were lucky to have some leftover fuel and rye, which helped people survive the occupation, so we could put fuel into the cars and take people out of occupation, and they had food. But the most important thing I want to say that during the occupation, none of our employees was hurt, which is the most important, because human lives matter the most. Well, the equipment wasn't so lucky. We had lots of equipment, and the Russian troops, or orcs as we call them, they were just destroying everything. They were exploding, they were drowning, they have blown up one of our warehouses, or they were just shooting at the equipment to destroy it. This was our office, for example, and I really like this picture, this one. They thought they were going to parade in Kiev, so they actually had the parade medals, but they forgot them in our office. They left them because with the assistance of the Ukrainian army, they went following the path of the Russian warship, if you know the proverb. And still, back in 2022, we had this kind of motto: who doesn't sow is a Muscovite. So we wanted to continue the sowing campaign. And many other farms have seen that even after the occupation, there are issues with broken logistics. For example, we had to take a 50-kilometer detour to reach our fields because the bridges were blown up, and 70% of our equipment was destroyed. And the biggest issue which we saw, and which other farmers are now seeing, it's a huge problem for Ukraine and for the whole Europe, because in Ukraine we now have the largest mined area of territory in the world. For us, the most difficult, the most scary thing was to make the first step on the field. It was scary, as if the child is making the first step, but we saw that we need it. Even though we saw there are many unexploded ordnances in the field, it still was necessary.
Besides, it was 2022, a lot of territories were deoccupied, and unfortunately the state was unable to do all the demining, so we had to do something by our own. So thanks to our team, we managed to mow 100% of our fields, but later on we faced with a number of other challenges, just like the other farmers are asking what's next. Yes, we've managed to recover some of the agricultural equipment, but then we understood we'll have a very significant challenge with the logistics and with the stockpiling and warehousing of the goods. The grain corridor is no longer operational, and as the other counterpart has already mentioned, we don't know where to sell our products. Besides, the price for the product is below the amount, of course, that we are spending on its production, on the growing. So unless we'll get help with the grain corridor, unless there won't be any compensations for the farmers, then it will be very complicated situation in the next year, as we'll be reducing the amount of the mown fields. Yes, we do need support. We do need the assistance in 2022, while understanding that most of the southern regions are under occupation. We started growing melons, watermelons in the Kiev region in order to replace the losses of the Kherson region. In 2023, after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam, we faced a number of other issues with growing vegetables. The other aspect, which is so much needed, that's the processing industry. We do need to have some support from the foreign investors so that the producer would be able to create some sort of a production for himself in order to sell the added value products. So thank you.
Героям слава. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's really important you mention the most important problem, how demilitarization of the Black Sea. Because on July 17, when Russia withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Initiative and started attacking Ukrainian ports, storing grain intended for export, so everyone started to seek solutions, trying to somehow negotiate with Russia. But I think it's a mistake, because the only right way to go is to make the Black Sea region free from the occupiers and guarantee the freedom of navigation, freedom of export, and actually not to be dependent on Russian will either to allow the export or not. So I think and we expected from international community, from UN, from NATO, and other partners, stronger position. And actually this was the mistake, to withdraw from the Black Sea before the full-scale war, because it created the problem. So now I would like to move to our international part of our panel. And since you mentioned the Black Sea, so it's a time to move to our panelist from Turkey. And it's really important that we have, and let me present Yörük İsik, geopolitical analyst, founder of the Bosphorus Observer, non-resident fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. So coming back to the Ukraine's role as a global food supplier, and mentioning that global consumption is increasing due to the population growth, also overall economic situation in countries. From 2013 to 2017, the world experienced an overproduction for 5 consecutive years. The world harvest records were updated, and this rate outstripped consumption. But the last few years showed that farmers are not keeping up with the growing needs of the world. And we have special presentations with all these statistics. So there is much less harvest in the world. And this is why it's so important that Ukraine has this right to export, and Ukrainian farmers, they describe that the problems they face. So they are, instead of thinking how to overpay for logistics, and they need to think how to be more innovative, creative in their enterprises. So since you represent international organization, but Turkey, so we here also expected from Turkey more powerful position using all leverages that Turkey has on Russia, especially in the Black Sea. What would you recommend to international community to do to guarantee the demilitarization of the Black Sea and international convoys, UN, NATO, Turkey will help Ukrainian farmers to export and not to allow Russia constantly to attack ports and terminals and actually to destroy grains, because it's already, according to the statistics, it's a million of tons that we, instead of delivering to more than 45 countries worldwide, we are facing all these problems.
Thank you for inviting me, first of all. It's great to be in Kiev, and you made a great introduction, and you mentioned the most fundamental problem here, which is the freedom of navigation in the Black Sea. But before we come to that, I will reply immediately to your question, like about UN helping to keep in the freedom of navigation or NATO helping. At the end, there's a say, if you want it to be done right, do it yourself. At the end, Ukraine really did it by itself. By the time the world moved, gather, plan, etc., I will mention at the very end of my time, but the new Ukraine naval corridor is Ukraine's plan. It's implemented by Ukraine, and it's working. At the end of the day, like many other phases in this war, Ukraine solved its own problem. But before we come to that, I want to mention also what's happening in the grain field, which is massive plundering of the Ukrainian agricultural commodities. And agricultural commodities, unfortunately, is not the exception in the plundering. Russia is also stealing coal from the occupied territories, and it's going all around the world. Many people are not thinking about when it comes to energy, but coal is a very important part of the current world energy market. And China, a friend of Russia, and is building thermal coal power plants all the way from Pakistan to the African coast. And some of that coal comes from the occupied territories. And unfortunately, even to Turkey, it comes from that. But I'm here as an international person, and there is actually a great Turkish diplomat here. So if there is an official position of Turkey, they will be reply. But yes, we all need to do collectively, all as the partners of Ukraine. And at this point, I'm proud actually, because Turkey, well before any other European partner, since the 2014 invasion, while many other European partners were trying to find solutions how Ukraine can hand some of its territories to Russia, Turkey has been on the record from its president that territorial integrity, any violation of territorial integrity of Ukraine is absolutely unacceptable to Turkey. But let's focus on more exciting how Russia is organizing this plundering, because I'm, as the open sources person, I've been on the record with some other international friends documenting this international plundering, which is, in a way, one more time, Russia is repeating to know what's historically knows, and that goes all the way back to 1930s. It's the Stalin's expropriations of the Ukrainian farms under the collective farm system. This is not the first time, actually, Russia organized or industrial scale level of plundering of Ukraine's assets. It's happening, unfortunately, for the second time. Nor, I like to also remind people, to audience here, that Ukraine is not the first country that Russia is showing against its neighbors, nor in the Black Sea. Russia already invaded Georgia. Russia is already invades parts of Moldova. And because we all decided to overlook that fact, because we were all very happy to continue the trade with Russia, Russia dare to show its aggression to Ukraine. It just didn't read the ground realities very well and hit the wall here. But Russia, as in the movie at the beginning, little video clip we saw, in conservative terms, moved billions, millions of tons of metric tons of grain, wheat, lots of wheat, but all other, soy, corn, etc., from the plundered at some point in gunpoint, some through the, some collaborators, unfortunately, some abandoned farms, some from the international companies' warehouses, grain to the world markets. And to do that, it used a mixture of Russian private companies and Russian companies. They are actually subsidiaries, amazingly, directly, openly. This is not like an amazing find, that because it's on the internet. I will show you the page. And Russian subsidiaries of Russian federal state enterprises. Of course, Russia is a country that, there isn't really a successful Russian private company that is not really part of the Russian system. Like the private companies involved in this plundering are part of the Kremlin's machine also. At this point, we can even talk about going into the, I always divert from the main topic, but, it's in this case, we are watching even maybe, yes, here there is the Russian Federation is the aggressor, but even in the Russian Federation, I think the system is a little bit hijacked by the bandits and organized criminals who are running Kremlin. At this point, since 2014, under the wrap, all kind of stories we hear through Russia Today and Sputnik, etc., that Russia is rebuilding its empire, these are historic territories, etc. These are all stories created to cover the reality of the small group of people who are running in the Kremlin and oligarchs and Vladimir Putin, who are stealing, plundering in an organized fashion Ukraine's national assets. This country has been under a major organized theft in the last 10 years. It's not only agricultural commodities or natural resources. This country's factories are stolen. This country's refineries are stolen. It's in such a level that in the most colorful example recently, where Ukraine successfully hit in the port of Sevastopol, the Russian base, the dry dock where the Russian submarine was getting repaired, that dry dock actually belongs, it's a Ukrainian national asset. It's stolen from the Ukraine. We are facing an amazing crime. There is an amazing crime story here. But can I start some of the slides? I have slides also, I think. Okay, somebody more clever than me did it. So actually my slides, I think this wasn't the beginning, but...
Можете на початок.
Okay. So do I... Let's see. Unfortunately, I'm not very super good. Well, okay, this was actually the submarine I was mentioning that was stolen, but here, let's... okay, I will keep pushing, see if this works. But basically, what happened is, and this is, again, an important point to highlight, that before the war started, before the last stage of the war in February 2022, Russia even purchased vessels. So this goes to my point that, Russia didn't come and find itself, in invaded territory and, happens to be here, there are farms, and I'm gonna move this agricultural goods from here. Before their last aggression, and Russia purchased vessels, some of them all the way from South America, and brought them here. And there are vessels that are on the maximum limit of the port of Sevastopol, in the occupied Sevastopol, grain terminal of Avlida can handle. So we are seeing here a planned action. Maybe somebody else? Okay, now it's moving. I see, okay. So here, let's see. There's a beginning, here. So, what are these pictures? I'm showing you here 148 tiny pictures. Actually, I don't, because I'm a inherently lazy Mediterranean, I didn't update my pictures, but actually there could be right now here 180 slides. But these are the 148 pictures of 148 different ships. Russia moved grain last year from the Avlita grain terminal. And these are the good days. There were some cloudy days that we might have missed because satellite technology only works when there is a good cloudy days. So we are seeing here how organized this is. This is not some, this is like, I'm giving this example as just being colorful and funny, but like Russia organizing Olympics, etc., that they really taught this and organized. This is not the disorganized Russia we are seeing. This is even working better than their military campaign, that they fail utterly in the logistics. Somebody intelligent up top assigned people, they organize trucks, because this is the Avlita grain terminal. Until the grain reaches to this terminal, and until the grain reaches to this terminal, and this man will know, it has to go through it gets loaded to the trucks, it goes to the weigh station, it goes to the train, it goes through so many stages, and it comes, as you see, like on the upper right side of the picture, there is the grain silo, and immediately to the right of it, there is a train track comes and the trucks come. This is a big organization involves hundreds of people and hundreds of vehicles, and those vehicles need electricity or diesel, etc. This is a well-organized crime we are seeing. So this has been the center of really the Sevastopol's Avlita grain terminal. So this is immediately to the north of the Sevastopol Bay, to the major downtown of occupied Sevastopol. This has been really the center of the grain plundering, but it's not only the exclusive place. The occupied Feodosia and ship-to-ship transfers, which is more complex in the Kerch Strait, also really took place. So this is the Sevastopol Bay, and from here, let's see. These are the same vessels we see, and these are all matched. This is how the open source works. I'm not going to go to, to crazy details, so I can explain in private anyone. But all these vessels, you see now, this is all Latakia, Syria. It was the same vessel. We are talking about each vessel making dozens of trips and going to the same place. And from there, again, systematically sold from another place that Russia organized through the Assad family's network to the rest of the Middle East. So, for example, this... Summarize, okay, yes. And here, for example, the same vessel gets loaded. It's passing from Istanbul. We can see this is the Bosphorus. It looks like a Turkish tourism picture. And it's, you can see by looking at the ship, it's loaded, it goes, and here it is. This is the Bandar Khomeini in Iran on the top of the Persian Gulf. And it's getting sold there, and the ship is right here. You can see it, it's getting unloaded in Iran. Why this is important? Besides itself, it's a crime, and it's a war crime under the Geneva Convention to steal this food. Besides itself is a crime as a theft. This is the way, it's kind of tragic and really crazy-making way, that Russia is paying for the Shahid drones that hits back to Ukraine. The money even comes from the stolen assets. So this needs to be stopped. This needs to be stopped. It's not very, very easy because international, treaties and boarding ships on the high waters, it's a complex operation. Only the world needs to get its act together and really work. And this was what I was mentioning. This is from the webpage of the Crane Marine Contractor Company that is a Russian federal, it's a subsidiary of the federal Russian asset. And ironically, to make our lives easier, they don't even hide it. You see, like the sailor is wearing a Crane Marine Contractor t-shirt. I have several more things like this. So they want to make our life easy. We can expose the operation. But, okay, so Hanna was warned that she's going to be a tougher moderator. We were warned in the morning session. But I will say this. That as a final thought, we cannot go into a nice lullaby position that Ukraine won. Yes, actually the first night when President Zelensky issued the Instagram video that they are not going anywhere, that was the moment they won the war. But active war continues. While we're sitting here in this comfort of this conference, the war is not over. And you see that Russia is playing to the time to hope in another winter. They will weaponize everything from children of this country to the food issues, to the coal, to the energy, and they will hope to reach the next year into the US elections that there will be the unity on Ukraine issue will be broken. So as we go back to our countries to expose this theft network and keeping this unity together, it is key importance. I cannot highlight how important, because the moment the unity is broken, Russia will make its moves to go back to original position. Yeah, sorry, override.
Thank you so much. So actually, the role of the Black Sea region in global food security has increased in recent years. And actually, what we are seeing, that weaponization of food means weaponization of hunger. And nothing changed from Soviet Union time, when Stalin's man-made famine organized against Ukrainians, Holodomor, a genocide, when millions of people were suffering because of lack of food, when Ukraine was world known as a European breadbasket. But now Russian totalitarian regime is repeating the same tactics. By weaponization of food, they are trying to weaponize hunger, but now millions of people will be suffering globally. Yesterday, the member of Ukrainian parliament, Alena Shkrum, during the discussion, mentioned her recent visit to Cambodia and Vietnam, that the negative consequences of the blockade of the Black Sea for the prices for rice increased in that part of the world. So it's another problem that millions of people are seeing, not that the price is not affordable. Price for rice is not affordable because of the crisis created by Russian aggression. And I just recently came from India, New Delhi, before the G20 summit, and during our discussion at the ministries of foreign affairs, energy, all speakers were mentioning 3 global crises: food, fuel, fertilizers. But unfortunately, there was no political will in India to mention who caused these crises. Russia as an aggressor state. And Yuruk Yisik, you are right saying that it's a crime, but actually it's a genocide, because of war crimes, crimes against humanity, ecocide. So Russia is committing genocide like it happened last century during the Holodomor genocide, and now Russia is trying to threaten millions of people worldwide. So now I would like to invite and to provide perspective from Latin America, and it's really important that we have with us today Aribel Contreras Suarez. I never visited Latin America, it's my dream. So after victory, definitely. So thanks for coming to Kyiv. I think it's important and it's worth today to have this discussion. So how people are considering Russian aggression in that part of the world, because Russian propaganda is so toxic, influential, and trying to sell that and blame Ukraine for not delivering food when everyone knows that it's because of Russian blockade and everything. So please, perspective from your country, and what are the solutions? What Ukraine should do more, maybe more visits to Latin America, more talks, more explaining what's happening here, because in our International Center for Ukrainian Victory, we have our motto, mobilizing world for victory. So the faster victory happens, the better world is. So please.
Thank you, Hannah. Before I start, I would like to ask 2 big favors. If I could get the gadget for my presentation, and if the technical team can be providing me my presentation. Thank you so much. Also, I don't know if it's possible to turn the air conditioner off because we are freezing on this side of the ballroom. Okay, in my personal perspective, I would like to share some important information. Some of these are not a surprise for you, but obviously I would like to ask you, imagine that I am going to be giving a geoeconomic chess point of view, because obviously talking about food security in terms of the war in Ukraine has a direct impact in geoeconomics. So what's the current global state of food security? For the last years, United Nations has highlighted about how the world is behaving in terms of food security. And unfortunately, the Global South has been in danger. Food security is a topic in the global agenda, but it's until now that we should be talking about food insecurity due to this war. I would like to highlight that Ukraine is the top 5th world largest wheat exporter after Russia, US, Canada, and France. So if this war would be happening in another country, the consequences would be totally different. But it's because it's geographically happening in Ukraine is that it's a must to highlight why it will be having more and more economic consequences. Hannah had mentioned at the beginning very clearly about the importance of Ukraine in terms of grains. This is a clear information. Top 1 in sunflower seed production, top 6 in terms of corn and barley production, top 7 in rapeseed, and top 9 in wheat and soybeans. In terms of the bread basket, Ukraine plus Russia provided a quarter of the global consumption. So Ukraine is a team player in the grain architecture. And if we consider that previous to the war, the main trading partners of Ukraine were China, Germany, Poland, obviously Russia, Turkey, Belarus, Italy, we can identify how important it is also to do a follow-up of how is China moving in this geopolitical chess. Why it's important to do a follow-up to India through this neutral position. It's not just because of politics, it's also about how important are these main actors for Ukraine. So understanding this, it is going to be giving a really clear overview about also how are the main importers of Ukrainian goods moving their pieces and their games through this world chess. So, for example, in terms of the main importers, we should highlight Europe, but also Asia and the Middle East regions. So this is not just about talking about the grains. This is not just talking about food security for Ukrainians. This is about putting into the global attention about how what is currently happening in Ukraine, is impacting the whole world in terms of food security. Hannah highlighted the 3 Fs, the fertilizers, the fuels, and the food crisis. So today we are in this panel just focusing on 1 F, but also in the future they will be discussing the other crisis. We cannot forget how the wheat prices have been behaving for the last years. The prices have been, having a very variable behavior. Obviously, through the war, the prices increased crazily. And if we identify about the behavior for the last 20 months, we can see that the prices per bushel, have been changing, ups and downs, and obviously this is pushing more and more the consequences of this war in terms of the global goods that are using as raw material different types of grains. Because this is not just about the grains, but it's also about the disruption in the supply chains of different types of food. We can easily identify right now goods in our fridge, in our kitchen, that if you see ingredients, for sure we will have different grains. And for sure, some of those grains are coming from Ukraine. So that's why this is a big threat, because Ukraine provides a huge amount of importance for our daily consumption. It doesn't matter where we are living. In terms of inflation, obviously, we are suffering a global crisis in terms of inflation because the prices have been increased for the last 19 or 20 months, and this will keep happening until something happens that we can see a stop in this war. So for me, this is the perfect storm in order to see how on this economic chess we are having a total disordered world. We cannot be talking about a new global order. I think that we are living a new global disorder because focusing specifically in terms of the food crisis, this is affecting deeper the global south, but in general, it's the whole world. So specifically about this perfect storm I have been talking to you, I would like to put into your attention that this food crisis is reshaping the way we should see this war. This is not a common war like in the past. This is not a linear war. We are living a spiral war, and I have presented in different national and international media from Mexico City that we are living a pentagon spiral in this war. That a pentagon, you know, it has 5 sides. So I would like to share to you, in order to be closing my remarks, is we have to consider that this war is happening in a spiral with new actors, new threats, new crises, new elements, and of course, new consequences. We have to put this in the attention of all the governments. This is not just Aribel's point of view. This is something that we have to be, putting our attention. Warner Group, what is going on with the prices, the Black Sea, grains. Unfortunately, Russia has been trying to do a trap into different countries that need the grains in order to survive. And what I propose today is what I have mentioned to you, the Pentagon spiral model, but also I encourage the Ukrainian government to keep doing a strong grain diplomacy in order to make governments to have clear that every time they receive Russian grains as a present is a way to stop the peace. And if really governments want to encourage peace in Ukraine, they need to keep encouraging and moving forward in this grain machine in order to move forward of still importing Ukrainian grains, because that's the only way Ukrainian could make and put into the attention of the global society, the international community, that they cannot move into Russia's trap, but it's important to have in mind, in terms of grain diplomacy, that Ukraine is the biggest player, not just for grains, but also for world peace. In case you are interested of a global discussion of how geoeconomics work in terms of this war, I highly recommend you this book of Nicholas Mulder, The Economic Weapon. And thank you very much for your kind attention. And this is my social media. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you for this presentation, and especially ending with the slides on sanctions, because actually we were a promise. In case of Russian full-scale invasion, the West will impose hellish sanctions that Russian economy will collapse. But after the full-scale war and actually genocide, unfortunately, Western sanctions didn't reach the effect of stopping Russian aggressive and constant bombing. So Russia continues to use food as a weapon, and actually it destroys our port infrastructure and grain storage facilities with missile attacks. More than 300,000 millions tons of grain, 105 port infrastructure facilities were damaged or partially destroyed after Russia withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Initiative this July. Can you imagine the number? When I'm thinking about this number of destroyed grain, how many people could receive it? So it's about millions of people suffering because of hunger, because we haven't received in time proper anti-air defense systems to protect critical energy infrastructure. And if we are talking about sanctions, so we are discussing about sanctions on military industry, banking sector, individuals, and oil, because the price cap is still $60 per barrel. No one reconsider this. So actually, this is also a hypocrisy to help to say that we are with Ukraine, but the sanctions not at the level when we could prevent Russia from new terroristic attacks. And all the components that Russia is using now to produce more rockets, kamikaze drones, these components are from Western countries. 90% from the US and Switzerland, Germany, and others. So I think we have to be very openly telling our partners that we need not comfortable for Western economy sanctions, but real hellish sanctions for Russian economy not to be able to produce more weapons in next 2 years. So thanks for raising this. And also, we recently started a campaign, Make Russia Pay. The International Center for Ukrainian Victory launched this campaign a month ago, and we already communicated with G7 ambassadors here in Ukraine, and we will be traveling to all key capitals, London, Canada, then Brussels, Berlin, promoting this idea of confiscation of Russian sovereign assets. Because when we are hearing about fatigue of the war from people who are not fighting, not sitting in trenches, but no political will to confiscate Russian assets, so it's really very worrying. But now I would like to move to Philippines, to Monsi Serrano, who is received 2 international People's Empowerment for the Advancement of Communities and Environment Awards, given by Universal Peace Federation for the Philippine Business and News and Stop Corruption Philippines. So also Monsi Alfonso Serrano is also a Henry Ford awardee for journalism in 2021. So I think also Russia weaponized information and also trying to change the reality. So what is the situation in Philippines? As a also journalist, what would you say, how you evaluate from the beginning of full-scale aggression till now, what else could be done actually to convince people that tougher economic sanctions, especially through people to convince world leaders, including UN, because from the resolution in March 2022, which demand unconditional withdrawal of Russian troops from the whole territory of Ukraine, nothing really happened. We've seen even position of the UN somehow trying to push Ukraine for deal with Russia on the Black Sea grain initiative. We heard about this debate on withdrawal of sanctions from Rossельhozbank, chaired by the son of Patrushev and others. In Philippines, what people are thinking there about Russian weaponization of food as weaponization of hunger, and what else could be done from our side?
Good afternoon. And from the Philippines, they're extending their greetings to you. Of course, Ukraine is facing two wars, two front wars, right? Attacking the different facilities, infrastructures, then the war in disinformation. As a journalist, this is something that I've been fighting for. In fact, I put up the page of the Philippine for Ukrainians. Filipinos support Ukraine and Ukrainians. It is something that I just thought before when I interviewed a lot of displaced Ukrainian last March and April when I was there in Krakow, in Czech, and also in Warsaw. I felt that there's a moral obligation for me as a journalist to fight this. And that also compelled me to come up with a documentary film. Later on, I can share to you the trailer. The disinformation is something that really upsets me as a journalist. And it is sad that in the Philippines, because of the distance that we have, I think young people are not really that concerned. But I have to go and explain to them from time to time that everything that's happening right now, in fact, Hannah called it 3 Fs. I called it 4 Fs. The food, fertilizer, fuel, and finance. The money aspect is going to hurt us. And this is also one thing that Ukraine can adapt and tell to the partners that the sanction must really be seriously implemented, because the moment it's just a victory in paper, it's useless. We really have to do something about it. In fact, I was really shocked that pre-pandemic, there are around 135 million affected by food insecurity. And last July, World Health Organization released that there are already 900 million affected by food insecurity. Food security, by the way, is not the absence of or scarcity of supply. Food security is about nutritious food, availability, and of course, the distribution. And Russia's playbook is very simple. We are also experiencing this in the Philippines with China. We have the West Philippine Sea issue. You know, I was kicked out by Chinese embassy in the Viber group as media because I was one of those who asked tough questions. I was removed unceremoniously. Anybody or anyone who knows the playbook will be kicked out. So let us continue to sustain awareness. Let us continue to fight when we see already some narratives which you can already smell more or less. You have to stop it. In fact, I was surprised about the technology that was presented yesterday, that Ukraine was able to develop that. I think that would be useful not only here in Ukraine, but also in other countries. Fighting the disinformation actually would create more troubles and more favor to Russia. The Black Sea Initiative, canceling it last July, Russia really wanted it to create chaos. This is my analysis, right? Because the more chaos it is, the more less attention will be given to Ukraine. The recent fight with Hamas, we had this global media update from the Israel Foreign Ministry, and at the back of my mind, I said, this is dangerous. Someone must be playing. A while ago, we discussed the peace order or deal with China. I was talking to Dr. Ivan a while ago that I don't like to play. I hope Ukraine will not play the China's way of peace process or peace deal. Why? Because China is the best friend of Russia. The moment you take the stand or the peace deal of China, even they said they are going to be broker for peace between Russia and Ukraine, there is something that I see that Russia and China will collaborate in the end. The way I see it, my malicious thought is this. Russia would like to dominate the West, and China wants to dominate the East. And how can they do that? By depriving people to eat. There will be famine, there will be starvation. And always remember, the moment, it's Maslow's hierarchy of human need, the basic, once you satisfy the basic food, everybody's okay. So they know how to target. This is something that also an opportunity in my mind for Ukraine to explore the ASEAN market. You know, we are also in the same, the bread in the Philippines, I know one of the oldest bakery in the Philippines is complaining when Russia invaded Ukraine. They said that, what will happen to the bread? And in less than 3 months, the bread shrink, it became smaller, and the price went higher. How are we going to address this? To my mind, this can be addressed by coming up, not by surrendering, our rights to the Russian or to the aggressor, but to pressure the global community that the sanctions be implemented. It should not be a paper victory. It should not be something that we'll just be happy that, hey, there was a sanction. No, it is something that is measurable, something that is manageable, and something that we can monitor. If we don't do that, we will fail.
Thank you for this speech, and actually I fully agree that what lessons should we learn after almost 10 years of Russian ongoing aggression against Ukraine? I do remember 2014 when Russia invaded Ukraine and with the attempt of illegal annexation of Crimea. And after 8 years of peaceful settlement, of attempts to solve Russian aggression through the diplomatic or political diplomatic ways, this approach failed. So Russia is committing genocide. And the success of our collective efforts would have been happened if we avoid the genocide that Russia is committing against us. So this is why in India I saw a lot of disappointed in Global North from representatives of Global South, because they learned the lessons that, unfortunately, we couldn't prevent Russia from full-scale genocide. So, and I think what's happening now in the Middle East, terror from Hamas on Israel, and what could happen in Taiwan. Actually, I visited Taiwan with the delegation from ICV last year. And during the Warsaw Security Forum just a week ago, we had a meeting with Taiwanese delegation. And they are worried about potential attack from China, seizing the opportunity when in the US people and parties are debating to invade and to create new conflict zone. And how world leaders will manage many battlefields or new theaters of the war tensions or terror. So I think it's really important to explain this delay with weapons to Ukraine. It's also damaging the credibility of international organizations, UN, NATO, world leaders to stop tyranny, to stop aggressor, dictators and others. So coming back, since I mentioned Taiwan, and of course, I do believe that God will save, protect, and the attention will not distract from Ukraine, and everything will be fine there. But also what is really important, and now I would like to move to Pavel Panasyuk, Ukrainian innovator, startupper in agriculture sphere, because everyone is also mentioning, our Turkish panelist mentioned that Russia is stealing not just grain and also all strategic resources. And Ukraine is a very rich country having critical raw materials. This is the future technologies, industry materials, and it's really important for the future. But agriculture sector, Pavel, could you tell us, is it possible that Ukraine could become Taiwan in high-tech agriculture technologies? How we could solve some of the problems like demining and also revitalization of land, also with water supply, what your startups, your innovations, how they could save the world, help farmers to be more innovative, creative, and feed the world, and actually with your technologies. Can Ukraine, after victory, to feed, as I mentioned at the beginning of our panel, 1 billion of people, not just 400 million? Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I think the only strategy which is really valid for Ukraine today is to be, and let's introduce some startup lingo, to be ready beyond ahead. So to be really prepared for all future activities and not just to react to whatever is happening here today, but just to think in future terms. We are analyzing the consequences of this aggression. We are analyzing the policies which are being introduced. But so far we see that there is very little being done in terms of implementation of these policies, and as such policies also can be questioned. In my I don't want to call it a speech, but thinking about what is happening here today, I would like to analyze what was happening with food security, with global food security in the past, yesterday, what is happening here today, and what will happen in the future. So, in general, if we speak about food security, we can analyze the situation, and this was already done in presentation by Aribel and many other speakers before, that if we speak about agriculture, we have to take into consideration some factors. Some of these factors are human-made, some of these factors are objective. What are the objective factors? We are facing global warming, right? So this is still the reality, despite the war. So we're facing global warming, and that leads to water scarcity. What does it mean, water scarcity? 60% of the world population doesn't have enough water. So when I was in school, I learned that Colorado River flows into Mexican Bay. Well, guess, it doesn't anymore. So if I'm correct, it ends on the border with Mexico, right? Because the United States just uses all the water which flows through Colorado River. Imagine that Poland, surprisingly, has right now the same level of water retention as Egypt. All right, Poland, Egypt. Seemingly very well doing country in terms of water resources. Poland right now has a huge national program about water retention. In this slide, what is happening in Ukraine, and especially the diversions caused on Kakhovka dam, is really an act of genocide. And in light of what is happening there, Ukraine will have to think its agriculture from the beginning, especially related to the areas in the south of Ukraine which were heavily dependent on water supply from this river, from this basin. At the same time, we are facing the situation when we have aging global population. That means less productive workers which can work in agriculture, less people who can produce food. And for Ukraine, this is an additional challenge because for security reasons, people move away from affected area. And this causes problem for many colleagues, as you have heard today as well. Another problem is that fertile lands are getting polluted. They are not that productive anymore, right? So the average and usual reply from the industry, from the agricultural industry, is let's put more fertilizers. Guess what? If you don't have enough rain, it's not going to help. So it's going just to contribute to additional problems. So this is not an imminent answer to how to feed more people and do it, and right now I'm moving to more human cost factors according to several policies which have been implemented large scale right now in the world. One of them is, for example, EU Green Deal. It means that 25% of European food should be produced in an organic way by year 2035. Seemingly, it's far away. Seemingly, it's not affecting Ukraine anymore. But guess what? After victory, we have to be prepared to deliver food according to the standards if we want to be present on those markets. Another factor which is highly affecting food security is food losses along the supply chain. 30% or more of food is wasted from field to fork. This is called like the food supply chain. So as you deliver food, you encounter losses during this process. And 30% of all food globally is wasted. So that all leads to a situation that even before the invasion of Ukraine, even before 2014, the situation was so much strained that global food security was an everyday issue for politicians. And we have a statistics that by 2020, 30 countries had food inflation, and that means how much you spend on food, how much families spend on food, about 15%. That means that half of the population spent more than half of their budget just on food, just to keep them nutritioned. So this is a huge challenge, and right now let's move to what is happening today. So how Ukraine is going to react and what is going to happen in Ukraine. And we have already heard the answer to this question. We are going to weaponize the agriculture. Not we. Agriculture is going to be weaponized, one way or another. Either, like it's first time I heard today that farmers do not dream about tractors and agricultural equipment, but about air defense missiles and system how to protect their workers, okay? So this is the reality we live in. Another factor which was widely discussed here today is that very weak reaction from international community created a window of opportunity for Russian Federation to weaponize supply chain. So they threatened grain corridors, and in reaction, Western powers and certain European countries had to also engage their military to protect the supply chain. And this is going to happen more and more often, I believe. However, I believe we didn't talk enough about the largest weapon which is used in this war. I mean, from the position of food security. And that is fertilizer and fertilizer supply. Despite the sanctions which were imposed globally on certain Russian companies, on certain individuals, Russia still remains the top player on the fertilizer market. Russia is responsible right now for the delivery of 50 million tons of different fertilizers. First of all, NPK, which is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And that represents 13% of total. And right now, can anybody tell me Who is the largest buyer of Russian fertilizer? No. No. United States. United States buy over 20% of, like, 20% of the fertilizers United States imports comes from Russia. So talk about the policies of double standards, right? This is an extremely interesting issue, because if we think in terms how to prevent Russia getting their additional money flows from international markets, we should be able to finish this war faster and in more efficient way, with many more lives saved. So out of this, two immediate conclusions come. So first conclusion is that we are living in very much interconnected world, and the problem of one country very fast becomes the problem for everybody else. So, and I don't think we need a big debate about that. And then another conclusion is that we need to think beyond these stopgap measures, beyond immediate sanctions. We need to think more in a structural approach where we address this existing system, where we think what can be done to analyze root causes and eliminate this process, these causes in the future. From our point of view, this is the only way, and I thank you for bringing the chess on the table, because this is the example which I always use. Checker player, or the player who plays checkers, never beats the player who plays chess, right? So this is about strategic approach. We need to play long. And in our understanding, playing long is reinventing the Ukrainian agriculture, cutting its ties to Russia, and bringing Ukrainian technological innovation to the market. And to give you some examples, I will speak about the companies we are developing right now and we are trying to promote. Yeah, just very briefly. So one of them is dynamic air cooling, and this is the cooling technology which uses no freons, requires half of the electricity, and is able to greatest contribute to food security in terms of how food is transported and stored. Then we have a company which is dedicated to water supply, and that company deals with cleaning all types of water and turning it into potable water. And then finally, we brought a company which is able to produce organic fertilizer right from the materials which are developed on site locally. So there is no need to import fertilizer from abroad. Farmer can be totally independent and produce their own fertilizer as they need it. So, and we believe that these solutions, this is something what we can deliver, bring to the market. And this is the strategy, this is the way to go for Ukraine. And probably final words. As sad as it may be, we don't believe that this is the last conflict, the last strategy. We are right now seeing two very active wars in Ukraine and in Israel. And unfortunately, these are not going to be last wars in 21st century. So instead of fighting the consequences of these wars, we should try to think about how to prevent wars, because this is a much more effective strategy. And by investing into war prevention, we are able to save significant amounts of money and resources from rebuilding what was wasted during these wars. And from Ukraine's perspective, of course, every crisis will cause or may cause a destruction. And therefore, it's vitally important that Ukraine builds what is required most, and that is sustainable solidarity. These are sustainable alliances through technology, through economical connections, through politics, through military support, which are able to sustain all types of crises we are going to face in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, the document we also produced, the Sustainable Peace Manifesto, where we mention actually how to reach sustainable peace. So responsibility for the war, it's important. Also reparations, and also important that Ukraine becomes in the future member of the NATO and the EU, and punishment, because I think after World War II, the Nazi regime and the society went through economic punishment. So what never happened with Russia, I'm slowly moving to the next panel, which will be on decolonization, de-imperialization of Russian Empire, which is important, but since we still have 5 minutes and we started, I want to also, not just after such brilliant presentations, especially from our farmers, what they are facing and how to help them. I see already 3 hands, so please ask questions, not make your speeches, that our panelists will have time to respond. So 3 hands, so please, and then please introduce yourself and just mention whom the lady, please. The man is sitting here and there, yeah. So 3, yes. Just a second, we will bring the mic.
Yeah, I think that it's been framed, the whole conference and this discussion as well is framed very importantly in terms of the entitlement and right to food and how the war affects that and how Ukraine can speak to that. But I want to ask all the panelists here, actually, whoever would like to respond.
Just one panelist, because...
Well, whoever wants to respond, preferably, from Ukraine. I'm asking, Hannah, you were in India, maybe you can decide who would like to respond. Because I don't expect a Ukrainian farmer to respond. My point is that we have been here, and I think we've had a conspicuous silence on an enormous humanitarian crisis and hunger crisis that is unfolding in Gaza. It used to depend on Ukraine for quite a bit of its needs. It's been suffering since last year. And I am a little tired of listening to the comparisons from important persons here about how the Hamas attack is something like the Russian attack. Sure, the Hamas attack was horrible. There is an anti-Semitic element to it, and there's no, I have no love lost there. But the point is that the systematic cutting off of electricity, of food, when people in Gaza and those sympathetic to it listen to Russia talk about how they are caring for the people of Gaza and this and that, and they hear radio silence from Ukraine except talking about the war in Israel. I think that, don't you think that there has to be a better response on the question of food, on the question of human rights, on the question of justice? We cannot have the moral, we are here to campaign for Ukraine. But it's a little galling to hear things about justice and radio silence about a terrible, violations of international law. We are talking about Russia violating international law vis-a-vis food and food supplies and other things. Well, so is Israel, and systematically so. So I think we need to call spades spades. I'd like to respond.
Thank you for this question. Please, yes, take the mic. And please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Stanislav Sereda. I'm project manager with the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. We are working on global food security, help to export grain. I have more comment, but of course your response to it would be welcome. One of the things that Ukraine right now is doing is trying to break through Russian blockade. Basically, a lot of ships are coming in and coming out, and actually right now I just read the news that another 3 ships are coming in. What is most important here, and I think it's important for everyone, for the global south as well, there are 2 scenarios around it: win-win and lose-lose. Win-win, it means Ukraine forces its way, of breaking through the blockade, and Russia realizes that, if it tries to sink Ukrainian ships, then probably their own shipments will be in danger. And then it decides, okay, there is this balance of equilibrium of power and nothing happens. There is a lose-lose scenario. And I think it's quite important that everyone understands that Russia might try to force the blockade that will actually end up in, naval war, and of all the grain from the Black Sea, Ukrainian and Russian, which is a quarter of world grain, being stopped from shipping. Why would Russia want it? I don't know, I don't want to speculate, but, if you think, okay, causing even more chaos, could it be in the interest? You never know, but I think it's quite important that you, as the global south, it means that you might have a bit more influence on Russia through diplomatic channels than the West, than Ukraine, that you still promote the win-win solution. But your comments are welcome on it. Sorry for taking too long.
Yes, and please, here on the first.
Like other speakers, I would make statements, but just a quick question. My name is Alex Bobrovnikov. I'm a non-fiction writer and an investigative author. A question from for our colleague from Turkey. You did this absolutely astounding research on this, I call it a gray zone activity of Russia, whether selling the grain and mixing it up with its own grain and so on and so forth. My question is, I mean, it's pretty hard to calculate the effective, not the number of vessels that you could do, but the money, the cash flow that basically went back to Kremlin and its proxies during this, I would say, campaign and this crusade as they perform it, you know, to bring stolen grain and plundered grain to the market. Thank you.
And the last question, please.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Nick Yurlov. I'm a senior legal counsel at Truth Hounds, a Ukrainian NGO which investigates and documents war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. My question is to those two colleagues that have brought in the board games as analogues for what we have. So both chess and checkers are considered to be zero-sum games. But in fact, there is a possibility for both players to agree to a draw if the situation allows, or if there's a stalemate. The reality in Ukraine is that we don't have the possibility to agree to a draw with the Russian Federation. Russia's declared goal was very clear in Putin's article: to destroy Ukraine as a nation, to commit genocide of Ukrainians, and to turn everything into Russia. Therefore, do you think that the analogy with chess and checkers doesn't quite work when we have our survival of a nation at stake? Thank you.
So, thank you everyone for your questions. Let's start from Turkey.
I will say, you know, the shipments are two ways. There is a network of probably 3 to 4 dozen small vessels work to feed the bigger vessels. And we have 25 or so vessels that are in good international shape. They work directly from occupied cities of Ukraine or from the ship-to-ship areas of the southern Kerch anchorage. And these are mostly Russian flag or Syrian flag vessels, but there are a couple other convenience flag vessels. These are companies, they're hiding in the crowd in places like UAE and unfortunately like Turkey, because these are major trading places. The companies clone themselves, so you have to stay constantly active to follow them. The same ships belong to the company A. Later on, the entire fleet gets transferred to the company B. So these are all getting documented. And one day, Ukraine will get compensated for this. But it's very important to keep documenting because they're actively trying.
What was the cash flow?
The cash flow, probably we are looking to something, conservatively speaking, given maybe they gave some discounts to sell it, to unload it, etc., I will say 8 to 9 billion euros worth of agricultural commodities is removed. Coal, etc., is very complex because maybe it comes to places like Turkey and other places and gets mixed with other imports, etc. So we are again probably possibly looking billions of dollars of billions of euros of trade. Since the last 18 months, since the last 18, 19 months. So this is a very big number. I will dare to go just for 10 seconds to the participants from India's very rightful concern. But I think there is a very limit of how much we can compare the Israeli situation with Ukraine situation. I mean, Israel situation is very complex. Hamas is not even a country. It's not even an organization. You know, it started as a social movement, and there is major influence of Netanyahu government's strange policies that the current crisis started. Not just, you know, I'm not going to go into that. So here, there is a Ukraine is under major aggression, and one needs to appreciate President Zelensky's incredible diplomatic talents. Some of the openings today, because Israel, the country that President Zelensky issued such graceful statements, Israel refused to give some of the defense products that Ukraine is very badly need, and which Hannah mentioned it. Ukraine's major infrastructure, agricultural civilian infrastructure, is under attack, because we, as a West, all the NATO members, etc., we cannot transfer, amazingly, enough defense, air defense material to Ukraine. So while Israel is holding key systems that can pass to Ukraine, these statements in the diplomatic circle is very acceptable. And for a country which is under a massive invasion, Ukraine is doing more than enough for the African world. While Russians are just talking, and just not even surpassing even implementing what they are talking, Ukraine, with the grain initiative, passed so much free grain to Africa. So yes, there is some, you know, ugliness on the top, on the words, but this is a necessary move so Ukraine can have access to the air defense that badly needs, because we are not providing fast enough.
So the voices of Ukrainian farmers.
Дякую, Ганна. Що я хотів сказати?
Well, thank you, Anna. Well, talking about the grain corridor as well as the checkboard, I would like to say, as a farmer, that we as Ukraine, we cannot agree to any checkboard scenario. We have to go till the very end. But for that, we do need the support of the Western partners, from more specifically the support in air defense. Last year, we've started to develop grain export through the Danube River, and if not for so many attacks against the ports of the Danube River, then Ukrainian farmers would not be facing such a crisis. I believe we have to move on. We have to develop the alternative exports corridors, and for the sake of food safety, our Western partners should provide us with more air defense to protect the Danube River ports, and then to move on. To move on in cooperation with Romania by extending cargo supplies through the ports of Constanța, and then together with the EU we could increase the scope of supplies through the railroad. Therefore, I believe that we shall never agree to the checkboard scenario, and it will not be beneficial to anyone. We missed this terror in 2014, we have this terror in 2022, now we have a new terror in Israel. Therefore, there's also expectations of what might happen in Taiwan, so we cannot make any concessions. Instead, we should stop this terror. Otherwise, it will continue to spread around the world. One more thing I wanted to add in response to the first question. We, in Ukrainians, we feel it's very horrible when someone is dying, when there is no electricity, there is no food, because we felt what it is when you arrive to the household and they can see with bread, and they haven't seen bread for 64 days because there was no electricity or no bread for 64 days. So everyone should stop the terror spreading in the world. Thank you.
The question, obviously, in my perspective, we are having two different chessboards. The chessboard where one player is Ukraine and on the other side is Russia. But at the same time, we are having a world chessboard where there are different players, and every chess piece that represents different countries I see that each one is playing their own game. So instead of having like a multilateral movement, we are just seeing unilateral movements that represent individual geopolitical interests and economic interests. So on this different place, let's see about the result of every movement, so that checkmate not necessarily will be world peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Russian genocide against Ukraine is an attack on humanity. And we all, how to say, every day, when we are receiving news from Kramatorsk, Sumy region, when new civilians are being killed as a result of constant massive missile attack. So of course, the key for us to get everything we need, the tool to finish the job and to defeat the enemy. And what is the most important now, because in this November, there will be commemoration of 90th anniversary of Holodomor genocide. 90 years, and it's less than within 1 century. 2 genocides from Russia happen against Ukraine. So I think it's really important the world is brave as Ukrainian armed forces to tell the truth and to recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Even with this, we are facing a lot of problems. There is a lack of political will. We mentioned terroristic organization, but Wagner Group in some capitals hasn't been recognized as a terroristic organization. So I think we are thankful to the European Parliament's Bundestag for recognition the Holodomor as a genocide, and recently this week Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe also. But isn't too late? Almost 90 years to recognize Holodomor when millions of people were dying because of hunger. And actually, as I told previously, the success of our collective efforts would have been happen if we prevent, if we avoid the genocides. Never again. So I think the key is here to make lessons learned. And punishment, justice, tribunal, finally has to happen. Russia should be de-imperialized because it's not just about regime change. It's about also imperialistic nature of Russian society, which allowed Russian totalitarian regime not just to invade Ukraine in 2014, but also every day Russian taxpayers are giving money to the totalitarian regime to kill Ukrainians, to weaponize food, to weaponize hunger. So there are many friends of mine in the trenches now. So of course we are praying every day, asking God to give God's shield to protect our armed forces. I don't like such comparisons like Ukraine is a shield for Europe or others. We are not shield. Actually, we want the world to provide the best weapon to our armed forces, our soldiers, artillery, modern tanks, anti-air defense system, ATACMS, F-16. And actually, the wake-up call, unfortunately, was missed in 2014. And the price, which all people in the world are now paying for their reluctance to defend the rules-based order. And the longer war lasts in Ukraine and the less weapon we are receiving, the West is losing credibility. Credibility to defend values, rules-based order, and actually the chances to restore a global security architecture is unfortunately decreasing. So my call is give Ukraine everything we need to finish the job, to defeat the enemy, and then please, it's my call to G7 countries, to UN and others. Tribunal is important. And I don't understand some hesitations or reluctance to do this. Confiscation of Russian assets, also important step. Demilitarization of the Black Sea and true defense of the Black Sea area and freedom of navigation, also important. Someone who really thinks that they could sacrifice Ukraine to appease the aggressor, we will receive the World War III, the global war, which will cost millions, I don't want to say billion of people. So this is why it's finally time to answer on the question, what is the end game of the world if Ukraine runs out of soldiers? So I think it's very important to finally have this victory strategy for Ukraine as a common strategy for democracy, as a common strategy for humanity, as a common strategy for the world, because defeating the enemy of Ukraine is the best deterrent strategy. And I do believe that we will succeed, but the faster we get everything we need, this sense of urgency I'm saying it from my friends, from Ukrainian soldiers, which are, when we are sitting and speaking here, they are protecting, defending us. So I don't want us in Kyiv to be like in bubble, discussing, and what is really important, actually, and I do believe that next Rammstein will produce more political bravery decision on the weapons needed for Ukraine to restore territorial integrity and sovereignty, to restore justice, and to defeat the enemy. Thank you, my brilliant speakers, panelists, for your contribution. So especially with the analysis, expertise, and solutions, and also special applause to farmers and your families that you stayed in Ukraine, you believe in Ukraine, and thank you to our innovators and startups how to become in the future, because this is the marathon. And our colleagues from Mexico, Philippines, Turkey, and the whole sitting here in this room. So we believe that the world is not divided by global north, global south. We are all belonging to the humanity, and actually we all obliged to defend our values as a human beings, what we believe. So God save Ukraine. Thank you everyone who is here today with us. And let me also mention that, and would like to remind you that in parallel with the next session on decolonialism, there will be a side event about impact of war and violence on women and society. It starts at 4 p.m. at Maidan Hall. It's second floor of the hotel. For those willing to attend the side event, please use an elevator and go to the Maidan Hall at the second floor. Simultaneous interpretation into English, Spanish, Ukrainian will be provided. I think it's really important to participate in this panel. And also there will be very impressive speakers. So thank you. Thank you for everything.